Okay, today we're going to start down the path of allowing our players to select one of the six predefined characters as the match starts. This is a beginning. We'll show you the control logic here. This will probably be at least a three sub-part section, but we thought we'd get some progress out there so people following along can kind of start to think about how they might implement these concepts in their own game. So the first thing we had to dig into is a couple of new systems that we haven't yet covered in any of these videos. And there's a couple of things I think that people may or may not recognize. But there are actually three ability system component, technically two plus a helper function, that are set up in the Lyra starter project. All the way to the right, the one we see and interact with the most is the ability system that is tied to the player state. That is the primary ability system where on the server, on your local client, and on any remote players, each client has all player states, and players and bots have the ability component player because of that, and they are synchronized across all game clients. And so if you think about the ability system that is tied to the player state, you can think of that as being synonymous with a specific player or bot in the game. However, Lyra also uses an ability system component on the game state. And so they add another ability system component to the game state. Now, the game state, there's only the copy that's on the server that's authoritative, and then a replicated copy to each of the clients that are attached to the server. So there's a game state for the authoritative client, which may also be a playing player, and it is then replicated to all players. So this does not trigger for bots. It's basically server controlled logic, and that is where much of the logic between moving through the various stages of a match occurs, and where we'll spend the better part of this video exploring and working on. And then there's the global ability subsystem, which it's really not another copy of the ability system component. It doesn't have an ability system component attached to it, but it provides a couple of helper functions that allow you to add and remove abilities and or effects to players. And so if you dig into that global ability subsystem, you'll see that there's primarily four nodes exposed to Blueprint. So you pull off of get the global ability system, and then you're able to either apply or remove abilities to players and bots. You can also apply or remove effects. And the phasing system of moving through a match actually uses this so that when you're in sort of the pre-game mode, when you shoot around, bots are running around, you're running around before the match starts, there's damage immunity. If you notice, when you get shot during that phase, you don't take any damage. Well, it's using this subsystem to enable that. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we dig deeper into it. The next thing is this concept that Lyra has of the game phase subsystem. So this is another kind of global subsystem that is set up to interact with the game state and its ability system component. So the game phase subsystem basically interacts with the game state and the ability system on the game state and applies various gameplay abilities to that game state. So there are three primary gameplay abilities, and then the gameplay effects that I have here in yellow that are used in this subsystem. Those gameplay abilities are, at least from an elimination perspective, the warm-up gameplay ability, which is executed up until the match starts. The playing phase, where we're actually in match and scoring is happening and things are occurring. And then there's a post-game ability that triggers upon completion of a match and does various things, and then likely will loop back around if you're playing another match. But in elimination, the Lyra the Lyra phase subsystem uses these three gameplay abilities to control the pacing of a game through these different phases. And that's where we need to make our edits in order to make our character selection occur. So if we dig into the warm-up, a couple of things that show up. So one of the early things that the warm-up phase does is it uses the global ability system to apply an effect to all players. That effect basically says, hey, you're in the pre-game phase, and therefore you get damage immunity. So the gameplay effect damage immunity, which is the parent of the gameplay effect pre-game lobby, is applied to all players at the beginning of the warm-up phase. So therefore, any damage done up until the match starts doesn't count. You'll also see the game phase tag. This is how they control moving through the various phases or determining which phase you happen to be in. So when this phase is active, this game phase tag is active, the warm-up phase. And you can see they have a specific phase ability that these abilities all inherit from. This is a C++ class. So in our flow, as we have spent the bulk of our earlier videos kind of in this match phase where we have a series of rounds and we play those rounds through scoring each round and ending. Now we're going to focus here on the warm-up phase. Right? And in the warm-up phase, we need to allow new players to join. We need to give them time to look at the optional characters that they want to play. Then they can ready a character. They can also see as their teammates are readying their own characters what their team composition will look like. They may choose to unready and change a character and then re-ready again. And then finally, when all players on a team are ready on both teams, we'll do a final tick down of our last 3 seconds and we'll transition to math. So this is the general flow. What we're basically going to be doing is talking about how we enable this. We won't be doing the exploring the characters and changing the characters. That'll be for the next video. For now, we're simply going to set up the technical flow of this using the gameplay phases. All right, our technical design is basically the server will control when we enter the phase. It'll set a time limit currently to 30 seconds. We may adjust that and give people longer later, but for now, for testing, we're at 30 seconds. Once that expires, we will proceed with the bots if no one else has joined. We will tell or broadcast the clients to open up their character selection window, which right now we just have a hacky little window that we're going to show. We will manage the character rule set on the server. So the clients will request a character. The server will then fundamentally allow or deny that. We'll manage whether the players are ready on the server, and then we'll do our final countdown and trigger our next phase. On the client, our responsibilities will be to show the countdown so we know how much time we have left, to show the select a character window to allow the user to interact with the various characters, enable them to explore different skills, ultimately let them pick a character, have them receive updates when others are selected. So there's no direct client-to-client communication. If this client selects a character, we will communicate that back to the server. We'll check that things are okay, and if they are, we'll broadcast it to the other characters that someone has selected a character. Same with the unready. If I unready, I'll send that the way through. So readying and unreadying their characters will be done on the client, although authoritatively controlled by the server. And then once we're post-ready, the visualization countdown of those final 3 seconds will occur on each of the clients. Okay, so let's do a little bit of the setup, the various objects that you'll need to copy and set up to make things a little easier. The first is we need to copy the phase warm-up. We've named it phase warm-up 3v3. So we made a duplicate here of the phase warm-up. And then we went into our 3v3 scoring, and we have to change right here. So once the 3v3 scoring is loaded, it grabs the phase subsystem, and it changes the phase to warm-up. So we're going to change what's in there now as phase warm-up. We'll change that to phase warm-up 3v3. That's the first change. Next, we need to create a gameplay effect. We called ours gameplay effect ready. That has an infinite duration and adds a status ready. So this gameplay effect will apply this tag to the ability system component on the player state for the players that are ready. And so the way the server knows a player is ready or not is it will pull the player states and pull their ability system component checking for this tag. And once it finds that all the players have this status ready tag, then we'll push the logic forward. So this is just a very simple way to add a tag to an ability system component. Next, we need to go into the editor preferences. So that's under the edit menu and then editor preferences. And under the Lyra developer settings, we're going to test the full game flow in Pi. So this checkbox is off by default. So we're going to turn that on. And optionally, we've also skipping the loading cosmetics. And what this does is it speeds up your ability to iterate through testing starting up. It doesn't load the lobby map in the background. You'll notice the graphics aren't quite as crisp and clean as they are in the final game, but it allows you to run through it more quickly. So by checking both of those, we're able to test in Pi, and we're able to skip our backgrounds. Now, from our previous video, we forced ourselves to have 6 players, as this mode requires 6 players to be successful. All right, and for now, we need to have a way for the player to tell us that they're ready. This will be the topic of future videos, but for now, for simplicity's sake, we're going to be adding a small widget to the extension point of mode status, which you see highlighted here on the screen. So this is the HUD layout that ships with Lyra, and we're going to be using the extension point mode status. And in fact, we're going to be, it's a bit of a hack, but we're going to set up right here in our 3v3 Lyra experience. We go ahead and add our ready window to that mode status. And this is basically pushing it onto the HUD. We immediately make it hidden, actually collapsed. And then when the warm-up phase needs to, it will tell us to show or hide that widget. Again, this is not likely how we're going to do it in the end, but we just need a way to kind of test through that our control processes are working and that our logic is flowing effectively. All right, so the balance, which we'll do in the editor, is inside that warm-up 3v3. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. And then we have this temporary hacky ready window, which will eventually become our character select window, exploring different characters, readying and unreadying. But for now, it's a simple button. All right, so let's jump into the editor. Let's first see how that plays, and then we'll look at the code. Okay, over in the editor, let's start by launching. So we're in our front-end menu system. And we're going to log in. And the first thing you'll notice is because I set up the skip the testing cosmetics, behind it's just a blue screen. It doesn't have the lobby scrolling in the background. That's more for speed. As I select play, start a game, and then move to our 3v3. So when I click this, For now, what you'll see is in the left-hand corner, you'll see a series of print strings that are going to be scrolling. They'll count down the roughly 30 seconds. If I don't press my ready button within the 30 seconds, it will auto ready me and push me into the game. And so there's not a lot to see, but I want you to just look in the corner. You'll see the countdown occurring in print strings. You'll see that we are not ready with a red print string. And then eventually when we hit the 0 marker, you'll see that we automatically will be pushed out of the waiting to be ready state and into the match. So in this first one, I'm not going to actually click the ready button. I will simulate being someone indecisively picking their character. All right, so you see in the corner that my character is not ready. It's counting down 20, 19, 18, 17. I'm still not ready. I have the ready window that's up on my screen, but I'm choosing not to click it. And as we count down to 0, the ready window will disappear. The final countdown, the last 3 seconds, will occur. And there is one glitch that's going to happen right here. For whatever reason, it does this, and then it actually spawns me in public. But that's showing you kind of the forced ready, and now we're in the match, and we're moving. Oh, I probably shouldn't have gone that far back. So this time we'll actually click the ready. And so this time we're going to go ready, and we immediately move into the countdown. Same bizarre bug that we're going to track down, and then it launches us properly into the match. Okay, so let's look at how we've set that. So probably the quick tour, we have our scoring, which we set up in prior videos, our respawn and spectator classes that we set up, our ability set that we set up. Under the UI, we have our scoring widget that we have at the top of the screen. We have our spectate prompt, and now we have our new hack job ready. So if we go into hack job ready, it's a very simple widget, just for now. It's currently a common activatable widget. We will likely have to do some changes to some of these things. But simply, all it's doing is starting off collapsed, starting off with the button saying not ready. It's listening for the game phase selecting. And when it receives that, it makes itself visible. And then we're forcing it to show the cursor. This is garbage. We'll get rid of that. It then waits for the match begin countdown. So upon game phase selecting, we show the window. And upon game phase match begin countdown, we hide the window. For the actual ready button, we simply have an internal variable, a Boolean, that we're flipping back and forth between ready and not ready. We change so if we follow if I am not ready, let's go down the bottom path, I will change the text on the first click of this button. I will change the text to say ready. I will check the box for ready. And then I will apply a gameplay effect to myself. So here's where I apply that I am ready. So this says, okay, get the owning player, get the player state, get the Lyra ability system off the player state, and then say that I'm ready. So this is the one that controls the logic. This is simply used so that if I click the button again, I'll follow the other path. So the Boolean is simply there for the UI aspects of it. The real control mechanism is applying this gameplay effect to myself or removing it. So on the opposite path, I go back to not ready. I turn off my ready flag and I remove the active effects that have this ready tag. So again, the whole purpose of the widget is to simply control whether or not a player is ready or not. Next videos will make that a lot more complicated, a lot more in-depth. For this video, the bulk of the logic occurs. So in our experience, we also added the ready window here, which again, we'll likely take out when we get a little more advanced in our thinking. But the main logic is in this copied version of the warm-up 3v3. And so let's explore this a little bit. So when the gameplay effect warm-up 3v3 is started, which happens in the 3v3 scoring. That's where we changed it from warm-up to warm-up 3v3. So when this gameplay ability is applied to the game state, this first little check is what we just dealt with in the editor preferences. So should skip directly to gameplay is what allows Pi to just launch into a map. But because we want to run a full life cycle, that's why we changed the check mark in the editor settings so that this actually returns false. So if it returned true, it basically skips over everything and just goes into it. All right, sanitized durations came from the warm-up. All it does is it makes sure that the countdown duration is shorter than the total duration. It makes sure that the numbers are positive. They're not less than 0. It just does some edit checking. Here you see us putting the pre-game lobby effect on all the players. This is what stops damage during this phase. And then our new loop here says we're going to loop until all players are ready or the max time expires. So the first thing we do is broadcast to the clients that say, hey, throw up your character screen because we're about to start counting you down for you to make a selection on your character. That right now is fairly simple. We grab our game state, and from our game state, we multicast to all of our clients. So the Lyra game state has this multicast message, which allows you to pass the Lyra verb message, and we're passing selecting through. And this tells all the clients to show their windows. This code skips if I'm a dedicated server, but if I'm a client-server combination, then I have to broadcast the exact same message to myself. So that's all that's doing. Once we've prompted the players to show their respective windows, we then calculate how long we're going to let them select. So the current duration is the total time to wait, which is 30 seconds, less the last 3 seconds. So this should start at 27. We then go into a 1 second delay. We might want to do this every 2 or 3 seconds, but for now, 1 second works fine. We then reduce our current duration by 1 second. Here's where we're printing out that time remaining that you saw scrolling on the screen. If we get below 1 second, or all players pass the ready check, then we're going to proceed. Otherwise, we are not yet ready, so we loop back and we wait another second. So this basically loops through here 27 times until the countdown gets to 0, or all players have passed the ready check. All our ready checks pass. This block of code right here is what sends the 3, 2, 1 to the screen. So it's basically looping through, counting down from 3, 2, and 1, and broadcasting the exact same way we broadcasted the ready window. Delays a second and then loops again. After 3 seconds of that, the last thing it does is it removes the damage invulnerability. So we remove that through the global ability system, and then we push the phase subsystem to playing. So that's basically it. The only other thing to maybe explore is this function for checking the ready state. So that function, that's occurring every second, and if this passes with a true, we'll exit out of our waiting loop. We start with an internal variable. It's just an internal variable here that says we haven't found anyone that's not yet ready, so we assume unless we get through all of this without finding a not ready, then we're good. We get all of our player states. So since we're on the server, this is only initiated on the server. We pull all of our player states. We loop through each one of them. The first thing we check is that they have a player controller. If they don't have a player controller, then they're a bot. So this filters out all the AI controllers, and only the player states that have a player controller associated with them will continue. We then get the player states ability system, not the game state, but the player states ability system. And we check whether or not they have the status ready tag. If they do, we're simply printing out that they're ready or they're not ready. This is the print strings of the two. If they're not ready, we then say, okay, we found a not ready player. And then when the loop completes, right, once we've completed that for loop, and we check whether or not we found any not ready. If that is true, we pass back we're not ready. If it fails, then we pass back that we're ready. So basically that check is occurring right over in our loop, right here in our loop conditions. So either we run out of time or everybody's ready. And that basically, so if you'll see that in action again, we play one more time, log in. See up here, we're not ready, not ready, not ready, 22, 21. And then if I go ready, we immediately move it to. Then we're in our match. All right, so that's showing you a little bit about the phases and how to modify a phase to meet your own criteria. In our next video, we'll try to squash out any of the remaining bugs, change it from print strings to a bit more game-friendly UI, and then format our character selection screen so it's not simply a red button. All right, thanks for watching.